接下来，让我们继续进行主题演讲 XR 产业投资及市场现状。And next, we will move on to the presentation, the current reality of VR and AR. 我们将有请到的是 The VR Fund 创始合伙人，为我们上台进行分享。We'd like to invite founder of the VR Fund, Tripartite, Shane Wilson. Let's welcome.
My slides. Hello everyone, ni hao. Thank you so much for having me. It is my great honor to be here at Qigndao to present. So this is really interesting because Liz talked about a lot of great data that she shared from her perspective, and I'm going to share some of the same data but through the lens of a tech VC. So I run a fund called the Venture Reality Fund. We're a $50 million VC that's based out of Silicon Valley but invests globally. We've been investing in VR and AR and AI for the past 3.5 years, and we've kind of seen, I've been involved in this space since pretty much the DK1 launch with the Oculus. I was originally a developer, designer, and artist before I was a VC, and I started experimenting with VR. I made a very quick prototype of what I thought would be a fun experience in VR. I recreated the movie The Matrix, where you could jump inside and you could meet Morpheus. You are Neo. You have to dodge bullets. You have to jump across buildings. In the process of making that silly little demo, I accidentally cured myself of my real-life fear of heights. And that's when I realized that VR and what it represents was not just the next gaming platform, but this was a brand new medium that was so powerful and so impactful that it would change the way that we play, but also the way that we learn, we heal, that we work. And so we started this fund. I've looked at over 5,000 companies in the space. We've invested in 31, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what I've learned and seen over the past 3.5 years. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about this. Like in the US, there was a lot of negativity towards VR, a lot of that hype cycle garbage, a lot of this idea of we're in a VR winter and it's really tough for VR. VR consumer adoption is not taking off. I think Liz kind of echoed some of that statement. What I think is interesting was 3 years ago, we didn't know what VR really was. So we looked at this stuff and we're like, all this stuff could be VR. Is 3DOF VR? Is mobile phone cardboard? Is that VR? Is 360 video VR? As an investor, what I look for is where are people spending their time, but more importantly, where are people spending their money? And where are startups able to make money in this ecosystem? And so, after 3.5 years, we think that true VR, 6 degrees of freedom, head and hand tracking, that is the viable VR that companies can make money off of. And so we consider that what was called high-end VR, tethered to the PlayStation, tethered to the PC. We see that that is really VR. And if you throw away the rest and you look at the adoption numbers, you see steady adoption numbers in VR. And what's interesting is, people will say, okay, mainstream. When do we get to a mainstream number? Is that 10 million? Is that 100 million? Is that 1 billion units? Mark Zuckerberg at the last Facebook or Oculus Connect mentioned 10 million. He felt like 10 million units was the amount that he needed for it to be mainstream, where a startup company didn't need financial support from platforms like Facebook, Google, or others to be able to build a product, launch it in the ecosystem, make money, and stand up on their own. So that was like the goal, to say, okay, if we can have 10 million units in there, that means that companies can exist by themselves and become profitable, right? And so we looked at the data, and we saw 4.2 million PlayStation VR announced by Sony in March 2019. And then NVIDIA claimed that there was 4 million PC VR. That means Rift, Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and the Windows MR VR headsets. So a combination of those is 4 million, although a lot of people actually think it's closer to 2 million. So we're thinking about somewhere between 6 to 8 million VR headsets right now, high-end VR headsets. And that doesn't sound that great, but hardware sales is only part of the goal. The real goal is, what do the software sales look like? But before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit about something. We look at this graph, it's pretty steady, right? We're like, okay, even adoption, people are buying it, but again, it's not as big as we thought it would be. But I think what really happened was we learned. We're like, okay, adoption is growing, but it's steady. The problem is the form factor of VR. It's hard to connect, it's hard to set up, it's hard to administer, and I think what we saw was there's a lot of friction in the current iteration of high-end VR. But the good news is, now we have the Oculus Quest. And Ted talked about this yesterday, but the idea is that, okay, now we have proper high-end VR, standalone. So 6 degrees of freedom headset, 6 degrees of hand tracking. It plays all the top VR games. It's now, and it only costs $399. That's amazing. And you know how amazing it is? Oculus, they never talk about numbers, they never share data, but they said in just 2 weeks, it sold $5 million in VR software. So people are like, oh, is that a good number? Is that a bad number? What does that mean, 5 million? We did the rough math, and that means at least 3 or 4 companies have made $1 million on a brand new VR platform in 2 weeks. No disrespect to all of the people doing LBE, but I don't know any software developers making LBE content that has made $1 million yet. And so in 2 weeks, boom, a brand new consumer platform already doing 5x. But I want to dive a little bit more into software sales. Now remember, going back to that 6 to 8 million small ecosystem of VR, it's so small, it's so tiny, it's not mainstream. Well, we did the math, and over 60 titles have done over $1 million in revenue. And a top VR title can gross over 20 million in revenue in 1 year. And so we've seen several titles, and this is broken down between the major distribution platforms online. So Steam VR data, Oculus data, PlayStation Store data. And what's interesting is PlayStation has the largest install base. It has roughly, now about 5 million installed, right? So that should be anywhere between 2 to 4x what the PC VR ecosystem is. But if you look at the number of titles that have done over $1 million in revenue, that you can see, even though Steam VR is a small ecosystem, for monetization, it's actually very strong. Now, the other thing that we care about is, are people actually using the headsets? Do they just buy it, and then do they just throw it into their closet and just gather dust, right? Well, there's actually a great data source that we can look at. This is only for Steam VR data, so we're only looking at a very small set, or 1/4 of the high-end VR segment. But what's interesting is, we think that this applies to all VR, but for the first about 1.5 years of VR, usage was pretty flat. And then all of a sudden, we saw a huge spike in usage. There was a social VR game called VR Chat, that finally got all of the ingredients together, found a repeatable use case, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But you can see, not just VR Chat, but several other VR titles started increasing daily usage. And the VR Chat numbers are a little inflated because VR Chat is both for VR and non-VR. And so they say roughly about 30% of their audience is in VR, so you should really take this number down by 1/3, so it'll be closer to here, closer to the other titles. But you'll see that now there's daily active users in VR, something that we hadn't seen before. And so you can see that this is a thriving community of active, engaged players that want to buy content and are willing to spend. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into what's working and why. So VR Chat that I just mentioned, largest social VR game, 3 million downloads, 7,000 concurrent users at any given time, and this is very important, over 3,000 daily watching or concurrent users watching on Twitch. So what they came up with was this model. Originally it was developed to be kind of the Oasis VR chat room where people can go up and talk to their friends. But they realized that to get repeated use, people were using it in a very different way. People could upload or download their favorite game or anime or comic or science fiction pop culture characters, wear them as skins, and then act out their fantasies and dreams. So they were doing 2 things. One, they were creating it almost became reality TV in virtual reality, where the stars were in VR, the supporting cast were in desktop and mouse, and then the audience was watching on Twitch and YouTube. And so people were creating content, a very raw type of content, and we saw 2 big types. One, they were recreating memes. So dress up as their favorite Sonic the Hedgehog characters and run around and do weird things together. But what was interesting about that was, if we looked at what they were doing, recreating memes in live virtual reality, they were really creating sketch comedy. It was a very basic type of sketch comedy show. And then the other thing that was happening, and they got a lot of flack for this, was there was a lot of trolling or online harassment, a lot of toxic behavior. But what's interesting about this is, if it was truly toxic, all of the users would disappear. But in that toxic behavior, there was also playful toxic behavior, which ended up being much more like a prank show, where people were making fun of each other, but they were willing participants of it. And so you kind of view it as two very well-known and established content paradigms, the sketch comedy show and the prank show, reinvented for the VR age. And those things were what really got the community and the engine going and the usage going. And so what happened was, they had launched many years before all of a sudden they got Twitch and YouTube integration to work. And once people started watching and viewing on Twitch, that's when the huge growth came about. And so what we learned from this is that in VR, you're not just playing an experience, you're creating and sharing content, right? Now I want to talk about Beat Saber. This is the most successful VR game. Everyone's talked about it, everyone's but I want to break it down and dive a little bit deeper. What is Beat Saber? Well, for an investor, this is so important because this is what VR success looks like. When they launched, about 3 years into the life cycle of VR, they made $2 million in 1 month. And they made $20 million in 1 year. And more amazingly, that was off a $300K initial investment. So, this is not just a success story for VR. This is a success story for indie gaming. Right now, it's very hard if you have a budget of less than $1 million to even promote your mobile app, right? And so here's a game that just only spent $300K to initial launch, $2 million in a month, $20 million in a year. So it's crazy. It's like people are like, oh, but consumer VR, it's not happening. VR is not mainstream enough. Think about back when the iPhone launched. What was one of the biggest iPhone games that proved that the iPhone was a valid gaming platform? It was a game called Angry Birds. That came about 3 years into the life cycle of the iPhone. And how much money did it make in its first year? It made $6 million. So here's a VR game on a much smaller budget that made 3 times what Angry Birds made. And people are like, well, I think VR consumer is failing. And I'm like, actually, no. It's doing pretty well. And what's interesting is, and this is my favorite part as an investor, it was developed by a team of 3 people in the Czech Republic. No outside funding. No platform supported them initially. No investor supported them initially. They were able to build and show success in the market without anyone's help. So this was the dream that Mark Zuckerberg was talking about. When VR is mainstream, when we need 10 million headsets out there. And what I'm trying to tell you is even at 6 million headsets or 8 million headsets, we're already at that stage where we're seeing success like that. And it's not just Beat Saber. Like I mentioned, there's over 60 titles. Every 3 months, I see another title that does $1 million in revenue in 1 month off of a less than $1 million budget. That shows that this is continuing to work for others. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about this because Liz did a great job of covering it. But with Immersive, it's definitely, we're seeing some really interesting spots where shown at all the festivals, but winning awards at all the festivals. And what I like too is they're not just winning VR awards, they're actually winning actual overall grand prize awards. And we're also seeing too, like Liz mentioned, was that they're actually getting distribution deals. And so there are people, other investors, that believe that they could monetize this content and bring it out to the masses. But the caveat, and I think Liz was very sharp to point this out, was that the distribution deal is just the beginning. Then the company, VR storytelling has to show that it actually can make back the money plus some for the distribution deals to continue. And we haven't seen that announced yet, but I hope we will. But what's interesting too is, I think there are other examples of VR storytelling that don't necessarily go on the film festival circuit, that some people consider more game, but a lot of gamers consider more story, that have been very successful. And so you can look at things like Vader Immortal, or The Blue, or Rick and Morty virtual reality. as more story-based telling VR experiences that have done over $1 million in revenue in the consumer market. And we already talked a lot about LBE, and we'll be more talking about LBE, so I won't really focus on that. But I did want to drill down a little bit on enterprise. So what we're seeing in VR for enterprise, it's interesting. So when we started about a year and a half ago, when we started 3 years ago, we had to explain to people, okay, what is VR? Why would you use it? What are some use cases? Then we saw some pretty big organizations and some early stage startups join forces and start building these proof of concepts. And they're building demos, essentially, pilot programs to show, okay, can VR be useful for these large organizations like a Walmart, like a Fidelity? And then 6 months and a year after those proof of concepts, we're now starting to see some of those concepts go to large scale. So 2 years ago, Walmart was training about 10,000 people in VR. Today, they're training millions of people in VR. And so understanding that, again, this is what's possible. VR is finally getting to scale on the enterprise side. And some of these deals are much more valuable than some of the numbers that we've been talking about on the consumer side. But the other thing I think that's very interesting, and I think is going to affect the industry that I'm kind of shocked more people are talking about here, is virtual production. Ted talked a little bit about it, but this idea that you can use VR tools to help you create regular non-VR feature film and entertainment content, but you can also use virtual production VR tools to help you better create VR productions and reduce the cost of VR productions. So right now, when we talk about the box office for VR, how much revenue can a VR project, storytelling project make? I think a lot of them struggle to say, hey, it's hard for us to make $1 million back. And so, honestly, if you think about it, well, if the production value drops from $500,000 to $1 million in budget to now $100K to $300K in budget, it's much easier to recoup that. So thinking about, and this is the one thing that shocked me too, when I expect to get a pitch of a VR immersive project, if your storyboards aren't in Tiltbrush or Quill, you're doing it wrong. You have to show VR in VR to really explain how powerful and how impactful it can be. And so I want to see more people in the storytelling world really embrace the VR, the tools, because that will help make VR the content better. Okay, enough. Now, I've been spending time talking about VR. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about AR. So AR is two parts. One is mobile AR. That's AR on your mobile phone. Hold it up, see the world, see a little augmentation on top of the world. It can be anything from Snapchat filters that change your face, or those makeup apps that make you prettier, or the live streaming apps that make people look more attractive. But it's also things like, putting starships in the scene with you. What's interesting is this all started with ARcade and ARCore, and in about a year and a half, they have about 2 billion devices now that can support mobile AR. But as an investor, what I track again isn't the install base, it's the revenue, who's making the money. And I haven't seen any startup, except for maybe one, that has done more than $1 million in revenue. So what does that mean? You have 2 billion install base, and only one startup has done more than, one early stage startup has done more than $1 million in revenue. To me, I feel like that VR market, as small as it is much more addressable, much more crackable than the huge opportunity that mobile AR is supposed to represent. Now, one thing that's holding mobile AR back is that the feature set is still pretty raw and pretty small. But you can see every year, every conference, Apple and Google announces new features, like more social features, that could help change the balance. But I think really, to get AR to be powerful and impactful, it has to be on the headset. But as we see now with the Magically Dev kits finally shipping last year, and the latest version of the HoloLens 2 shipping this year, none of those companies have really talked about when a consumer headset will be available. I think that most recently there was something where there's some story about Magically saying it might be, a consumer device might be available end of 2019, early 2020, but not really sure. But it's once a device is available, it still takes at least a year to get ramped up to 250,000, 1 million devices that could be an addressable market. So I really think that the VR, the headset AR market to be addressable for consumers is still years away. So what about content? Well, If we look at what's going on with mobile content, Pokemon Go is still the king. A lot of people are like, oh, Pokemon used to be so big, but then it kind of died. Well, they actually make more money today than they have ever made, and they made over $2.4 billion in revenue in 2 years. And that number is amazing. But again, you have to think, well, how much did it cost them to actually make that? And Pokemon Go as a game was years in development, built off a lot of infrastructure that was actually spun up by Google. Niantic was originally a Google spin-out company, and their first game, Ingress, was an example of trying to use the Google Maps interface to try to gamify it. So it represents easily over $1 million, probably closer to 100 million, probably closer to hundreds of millions of dollars in development costs. And so this is not something where small startups can play. But again, if you can do it, it's a huge market. The other place in the US that's really popular is Snapchat. Every day, 70 million people in Snapchat uses the AR lenses. There's been over 40,000 lenses created, and they've been used over 15 billion times. Now, that sounds impressive, but I always go back to monetization. And right now, there's been some ad campaigns that have shown some monetization, but I still have yet to see a startup build an actual business off of those impressive sounding numbers. Where we have seen AR be effective, mobile AR, is for commerce. So House talked about how AR users are 11x more likely to purchase. Shopify recently talked about how people that use AR or 3D visualization in their map are 2 times more likely to purchase. And that interactive mobile AR, Unity has talked about how they have longer dwell times and longer and much more engagement. But again, as an investor, it's nice that House, IKEA, and these huge companies are doing well, but if it doesn't help early stage startups, it's not that exciting for an investor like me. So investment trends, just something I talked about. I'll try to go fast, we're almost out of time. But you can see that investment's been pretty steady. And even in the winter of VR, 2018, when VR and AR had probably the worst PR, you can see it was still a high. It was a small plateau, but still $3.3 billion invested in the ecosystem by investors. And this doesn't count the billions of dollars being invested by Facebook and Microsoft and others. So one of the things if you're curious about what's going on globally, we create something we call the VR&AR industry landscapes. So this is the brand new VR industry landscape we put out a month ago, and it represents all of the companies that we consider our top leaders in the ecosystem. So I think now there's over, like 300 or 400 companies that are listed. What's interesting, it starts with the bottom, hardware infrastructure, display devices, input devices, then content distribution platforms, and content creation tools, and reality capture tools. And then on top of those layers of infrastructure comes the applications of the content themselves, split across the different verticals. And you can see, of course, gaming is huge, entertainment is huge, location-based entertainment is huge, but we're also seeing a lot of traction in healthcare, in enterprise, sports and live events, and education. Oh, and so this is the AR landscape. And I'm actually going to update this in about 2 months, so don't worry. Don't worry about taking pictures. But again, it starts out with infrastructure, tools, and applications. And what you see is there's a lot less companies here. And a lot of that too is in the VR industry landscape, it's very top heavy because the infrastructure is very mature, the tools and the platform the distribution platforms are very mature. And now it's up to us, content creators, application makers, to start looking for the quote-unquote killer app that's going to drive consumer adoption. Now on the AR side, like I told you, we're still very early in understanding the infrastructure stage. Is it going to be mobile AR? Is it going to be a headset AR? So we're still defining that hardware ecosystem, and until you've gotten that solidified, it's hard to grow the rest of the ecosystem on top of it. So we like to say AR is still defining the platform. So it's about 3 years behind. So I'm done with time, but I just wanted to wrap up by saying the future of XR is bright. I think the Quest and 6DoF full VR headsets represent the right form factor on the hardware side that's going to drive consumer adoption. It's that inflection point that starts getting us that huge growth that we've all been waiting for. And I think as an investor, I'm looking for those things where when a company makes $1 million in revenue, that's impressive. When a company makes $10 million in revenue, that's really impressive. When they make $50 million, $100 million in revenue, that's when we're really mainstream. And I think that within 2 years' time, we're going to see that happen with VR startups. And the fact that things like this can exist, where people are playing VR, people on the street can watch people play in VR, I think that this shows that VR has succeeded. So thank you, everyone. I'm Tipitat, and I will be available for questions. Please reach out to me. Follow me online.
Thank you, Mr. Tipitat.